My name is Kelly.
And my name is Will.
We are two Florida attorneys
Who love our 5 dogs.
and 2 cats.
And love listening to true crime.
Mainly me.
So I hope you enjoy our show as we delve into all things spooky.
This is For Crime's Sake.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Monday. We hope everyone's week is getting off to a good start.
And we have our little Winston here in the studio today, which is always fun.
He's a lot of fun. He's a good baby. So, Kelly, what is on the docket this week?
So, this week, I actually don't have anything in particular other than really getting the backyard into good condition. We got to do some weeding.
Yeah.
I guess it should be on our docket. But no, the heat here is just intense, so it's just so hard to keep the plants thriving and stuff with
It's
it.
brutal back there. Yeah. No, that is, I guess, on both of our dockets.
And I want to do some plant shopping, so that's kind of all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, those are good things.
And what about you?
So one of my favorite current authors, Will White, just put out the 12th and final book in his Cradle series, and I've been casually rereading the 11th in preparation for that, and I'm about done, so I'm going to dive into book 12 and finish it out.
Yeah, so it's probably kind of bittersweet, right?
It is. It's tough. It's like
over.
Ted Lasso last week, and now
that was tough.
Now I have to lose Cradle this week. It's a lot, but I'm getting through.
All right, so let's dive into this week's episode. Sources for today's episode include findcaitlyn.com, okcfox.com, medium.com, and ksstradio.com. And this is an especially important case because it started pretty recently and it's still being actively investigated by multiple law enforcement agencies. But despite the amount of effort being expended, this case remains unsolved.
It's a wild one.
It is. And, because of that, the family and investigators are pleading with the public to share the story and disseminate as much information as possible. And obviously that's with the hope that somebody out there has the missing pieces to complete this puzzle, honestly.
And that seems to be where investigators are leaning at this point is we need more information, and it's going to have to come from somewhere else.
This is the suspicious disappearance of Caitlyn Case. And one other thing to keep in mind is that because this case is so new, we don't have a ton of information, not the same volume that we normally do.
Yeah, it's not like where we have cases that people have been looking into for 15, 20 years and there's all kinds of stuff that people have come up with. This is still pretty fresh.
Exactly. But what we do have is the story of how this case has developed directly from Caitlyn's family. The website findcaitlyn.com is either run by her family or on their behalf, and Caitlyn's mother, Caitlyn Case, has provided regular updates about this case, most recently in January of this year.
Yeah, she posted a big update on Caitlyn's birthday.
Yep. What a sad way to celebrate your daughter's birthday.
Tough day.
So Caitlyn Rose Case is a Louisiana native. She was born January 25th, 1988 in Louisiana, where she lived for most of her life. However, in the summer of 2022, which is when this case really starts, Caitlyn had recently moved to Colorado and was living near some family members there while working as a technical mechanic.
That was probably a pretty big move, a pretty big culture shock, too, from Louisiana to Colorado.
Sure.
Very different places.
And that's not, being a mechanic, that's tough work.
Yeah, it's no joke.
Yeah.
But she seemed to enjoy it from what I've read.
Well, would you say I'm a mechanic?
You're a lot of things. A mechanic is not one of them.
Do you remember that? You're not either, though. Remember, what was that? Where did we go? AutoZone, and then that guy had to like help us find it.
Yeah, shout out to AutoZone for having employees that help out in the parking lot.
That man was the real MVP that day.
He really was.
Yeah. So by all accounts, things were going well. Caitlyn's career seemed to be on a good trajectory, and there's never been any evidence that Caitlyn was having any particular issues or concerns beyond, the normal day-to-day life.
Yeah, it seems like her career was like, there was a clear path forward. Yep. She was happy with the work she was doing, so everything was going pretty good so far.
Yeah. And on July 31st, 2022, which for any Harry Potter fans out there, it is Harry Potter's 42nd birthday.
Yes, it was.
Makes me feel very old.
Right.
But Caitlyn flew to her old hometown of Houma, Louisiana, to buy a car, which she was then going to drive back to her new home in Colorado. And her travel to Louisiana seems to have been normal, and there's no indication of anything noteworthy taking place during the time she was in Houma.
Yeah, so we don't have any like suspicious interactions with old ex-boyfriends or anything.
Yeah, exactly. There seems to be nothing too crazy going on.
Nothing
that was reported, at least.
Yeah, nothing to jump up about.
Yes. So 4 days later, on August 4th, Caitlyn started making the trek back to Colorado in her newly purchased 2004 black GMC Envoy.
Very practical car, by the way. I mean, really, truly.
And I guess I don't know much about Envoys, but I would hope pretty good in the cold weather.
Yeah, decent. Right? I mean, and 2004 that was still running. I mean, they're pretty well made.
And so Caitlyn kept in constant contact with her family throughout the drive, with periodic interruptions because she was having issues with her GPS and her cell signal was pretty spotty. And right away, it's worth pointing out that this drive is a monster. So we obviously don't have exact addresses, but just for reference, the drive from Houma, Louisiana to Boulder, Colorado is roughly 1,300 miles, which would take about 19 and a half hours to drive.
Super, super far.
Oh, yeah. The route winds through Louisiana, a huge stretch in Texas, and a small run through Oklahoma, and then finally into Colorado.
Yeah, I mean, and the Midwest in the U.S. is an enormous place with tons of land, and it's pretty sparsely populated as compared to the coastal parts of the U.S. So, I mean, this is like backwoods, and it's huge.
And for our listeners who aren't in the United States and may not have a good point of reference, the continental United States is enormous.
It really is.
As Will just said, basically. And the drive would be roughly equivalent to driving from the westernmost point of France through Budapest almost to Ukraine.
Yes, it's almost equivalent to driving across almost all of Europe.
I mean, it's a long and often extremely very rural drive through most of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It's a
hike.
It's a hike, and it's not easy driving. Not the safest in the world.
Yep. So Caitlyn made her way back to Colorado, but she was having real difficulties navigating.
Yeah, the signal out there is still, I mean, it's just so far between people at times that you don't have cell or GPS signal.
Yeah, that's scary, especially for a young woman driving by herself. That far. Yeah. Ultimately, Caitlyn ended up relying on her dad to help guide her back on track over the phone after she ended up severely disoriented in Texas.
And the Texas portion of this drive is so massive. Yeah. It's like probably 70% of the drive, and Texas is just huge. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah. And unfortunately, around 5 p.m. on August 5th, their connection dropped. According to cell data, she was approximately 5 miles southwest of Bogota, Texas, when the call dropped. And that is the last known contact with Caitlyn Case to this day.
That's a hard thing right there.
So sad. Although they had no reason to believe that Caitlyn had met with any danger at the time, her family knew there was a problem like pretty quickly when they couldn't reestablish contact with her, which led them to report Caitlyn missing the next day, which was August 6, 2022.
And that's, I mean, good for them for doing that, because it's kind of a tough thing.
It is.
Very long, very rural drive. She didn't have good signal. Maybe she just got lost, pulled off somewhere to sleep. You know, but they didn't take chances, which I respect.
Yeah, and they seemed to be in constant contact as much as they could with her throughout this drive, so they were very quick to realize there was a problem.
Yeah.
The next day, investigators received evidence of Caitlyn's cell phone pinging on a tower near Hugo, Oklahoma, and investigators were immediately dispatched to the area to conduct a search. But the search turned up empty. According to Caitlyn's mom, Caitlyn's father went to Hugo, Oklahoma the very next day, and he remains in the area still looking for his daughter.
And that's one of those practical, heartbreaking things that is like, okay, I'm going to go out to Oklahoma to look for her, and I'll be back when I find her.
Yeah.
And he's still there.
Yeah. And investigators were fortunate to have had access to all of Caitlyn's electronic bank records, which allowed them to follow her trail and collect camera footage and witness statements from anywhere she stopped and spent money. But none of that evidence has yet to yield new information.
So frustrating.
So crazy.
Much data, so much time, and nothing.
Part of it's just the distance, but also how rural it was. It just makes there's probably, I'm sure, big portions of it where nothing was happening.
Exactly.
And
I mean, there's no way she would have been able to stop anywhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then, in an incredible stroke of fortune, Caitlyn's brother found her Find My Phone information. And with the help of a Best Buy employee, they were able to access that information, providing investigators with the exact location of Caitlyn's phone, which is so helpful. So I don't know if you do, Will, but I have Find My Friends with my family members with, I think it's my siblings and my mom and dad, and we have it actually. But you should probably honestly also do it with your family.
I think I only have it set up with you, but I also have air tags attached to like all of my things. So if I ever do disappear, check literally any device I have, and it will tell you where the other 12 are, and I'm probably with one of them. So
I have a funny story actually about it. Well, I guess it's not that funny. Okay. I've now made it like, now everyone's to be very underwhelmed with that. But so in law school, a really good friend of mine, he had lost his phone, and he was the type to go running outside
like a healthy person.
Yeah. And he lost his phone during this like miles long run, and we had to use Find My Phone, and we went that whole way to find it, and we actually found it with that app.
It's good, and I mean, having those location services on, you're giving up some privacy, but the flip side is if you disappear, it gives people some information.
The most ridiculous part was it was about the first time either one of us had ever used it, so you should see us trying to figure like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And then she's like,
I can imagine that scenario.
Yeah.
Seems, anyway. That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. So anyway, the phone pointed the search team to a large parcel of private property in Hugo, Oklahoma. And Caitlyn's father shared this information with the Hugo police, who were able to gain access to the private property the same day. So that's great.
Honestly. And I mean, this is pretty quick, because she's reported missing on August 6th, and 6 days later, they've got a location for her phone.
Yeah. And Caitlyn's 2004 GMC Envoy was discovered on this property around 4 p.m. on August 12th, along with all of Caitlyn's belongings. But, bizarrely, no sign of Caitlyn was found.
That's got to be tough. That's a hard lead to find.
All her stuff.
Yeah.
And according to cell data, the car came to its resting place around 11 p.m. on August 5th.
So this is late at night on August 5th, and somehow her car shows up on this private property, and she's just in the wind.
And it appeared, at least according to Caitlyn's mother's report, that the location and angle of the car looked as if someone had tried to push the car into the Kiamichi River. Am I pronouncing that right?
I think so.
Kiamichi.
Phonetically correct.
Yeah.
Kiamichi River. I think that's it.
Okay. But I should just hold on. Let's pause and we'll look it up. So we're back after looking that up, and it is Kiamichi River, which is, I think, pretty close to what I was saying.
Yeah. Although that's the American pronunciation, there's a different word that the Native Americans who named it use, and that is a different word, but it's spelled differently. It's a different language.
Do you know what that is?
I don't. I'm just sharing that in case anyone's wondering.
Okay, good to know. So anyway, but the car. So wait, what was I even talking? Okay, so it looked as though someone had tried to push the car into the Kiamichi River, but were thwarted by two trees that caught the car just before a 75-foot cliff.
And Caitlyn's mom, just when she writes about this, she says, and it was like an act of God, because ostensibly, if those two trees hadn't been right in that spot and it hadn't gone to that spot, it's going over a 75-foot cliff into the river, and anything that they might have gotten from it is going to be a heck of a lot harder.
Yeah, no, this was so lucky.
Very fortunate.
Unfortunately, it still hasn't yielded any.
It hasn't solved the crime, but Caitlyn, assuming anyway. Yeah.
Because of the position of the car, it took several hours to move it to an area where it could be inspected safely. And during that time, investigators, including Caitlyn's father, met with the daughter-in-law of the property owner who lives there with her husband.
Which is probably how they were able to be on the property.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they didn't have a search warrant or anything. They're just there.
Which is always nice when people open up their property, because nobody likes when police are all over looking through their stuff.
You want your privacy.
Yeah, you want your privacy and all that. But
this is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
I would say.
And the daughter-in-law of the property owner told the team that had gathered that she had witnessed two cars entering the property on the night of August 5th, the night Caitlyn disappeared, but she only saw one car leave. And investigators asked if she could identify the other vehicle or if she saw a license plate number, but she told them it was dark and all she could see were taillights.
And this is really frustrating. Not that I'm saying that these people are involved in any way or anything like that, but it's like you see two cars coming onto this private land and one car leaves and you never wonder, should I look into that? Is that odd? And maybe this happened all the time in that spot. Yeah,
it might just be such a relatively large piece of property, and people just.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that's the case. It's just it's frustrating to have somebody who was there and saw this, and there's no more detail than that.
Oh my gosh! What about I've heard so many cases. I've honestly worked on a bunch of cases where people were accused of going onto people's land and taking the palmetto berries.
Oh yeah.
So it could be we don't know what's going on in their property, but that happens pretty frequently.
That actually does happen all the time here. Weirdly enough. Yeah, I guess maybe I'm being too harsh about that.
Yeah.
I just feel like you see something going on your property at 11 p.m.
But if it happens all the time, and it's like 11 p.m., you're like, the last thing I'm going to do right now is go investigate these mysterious cars on the.
And I guess, that's fair. And I guess it's her husband's dad's property, so maybe she's not really in a position to worry about it or want to worry about it because maybe they drive in and out constantly.
If it's 11 p.m. and we're at your dad's house and I see two cars, I'm going to be like, that's a tomorrow problem. Seriously.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. I'm being too critical.
Yeah. So anyway, unfortunately, we don't have a ton of detail about any follow-up with these property owners because this is, fairly new and an ongoing investigation. But it doesn't seem as though police, like law enforcement, believe that they are involved in any way.
No, they have never been named in any capacity or indicated anything that these people were involved.
Yeah, and at the very least, they've never been named as suspects anyway. So. On August 13th, Caitlyn's mom led a search effort at that property, aided by a team of search dogs and their handlers, but the search failed to yield any new information. And
just a shout out to those people. That was a volunteer, not-for-profit organization that does this kind of work, and they came out to search that property just to be helpful.
Yeah, and that's awesome when people lend their services to families that are struggling.
Yeah, bring resources that you might not have otherwise.
Absolutely. That said, though, Caitlyn's mom reports that they weren't able to complete the search because the property owner's son asked them to leave the property. I mean, it is his right.
It's one of those double-edged swords. Yeah. And we've talked about this before. But it's like, you have an absolute right to your privacy, especially on your own property. And if you don't want the police there, you don't have to let them in unless they have a warrant. And so you can tell them to leave or not be there. But the flip side is it makes it look kind of suspicious. Yeah. Because it's like, well, if there's nothing for you to hide, then why can't we look around where my missing daughter's car was discovered?
No, and it is tough, right? Now you've had police, you have dogs searching, these people's land, and it does start getting
intrusive.
Very intrusive, absolutely. And so I get the desire to have some of your privacy back.
Yeah.
But the problem is
there's a woman missing.
There's a woman missing, and
her car was found on your property.
Exactly, and now,
now you're cutting off the search.
Exactly. I'll tell you, I wouldn't do it. I would be fine, search. I mean, I'm not saying I'd be like, well, this is lovely, but I would allow it.
Yeah, I'm not thinking we'd be jazzed about it. But if there's a missing woman and
that would take precedent.
There might be evidence there. Then let's let them look.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And the last thing you want is any, criminal activity taking place on your land anyway, right? I mean, that's the last thing I would want.
And I would want to know if it had.
Exactly.
I want to take action on that. But anyway, either way, it's not evidence of a crime. It's just something to note.
Yep. And sadly, since that time, there's been no more meaningful developments or discoveries. And possibly part of the reason for that is it's important to note is due to the fact that the car and its surroundings were not initially treated as a crime scene by investigators, which means it wasn't afforded the care needed to find untainted forensic evidence.
And that's really frustrating. And
yeah, it is.
Again,
as a missed opportunity that you can't get back.
And it's one of those things that I can understand the thought process of, well, she's driving in this rural area and we don't know and we don't see any evidence of anything so far other than this girl was driving and then got lost. But
and the
why
parents
not?
Were saying, she seemed disoriented in Texas and all that.
But why? I mean, it's how much of a resource sink would it really have been to wall it off and investigate?
I agree. Until you have some sort of proof that it's not a crime, treat it as a crime, because you can't undo the damage and what's lost by treating it as if it's not. And then, oh, wait, it could have been. You lose a bunch of possibly very significant evidence. And
it's hard with these missing persons cases because we do see this happen a lot where it's not taken that seriously, especially if it's an adult, because adults are allowed to disappear if they want to. Yeah. It's but it's frustrating because why not have that prophylactic instead of treating it as a...
Well, and in this case especially, this was not like this girl just up and left her life at this point. She had been in constant communication, traveling a long distance back home, and now something clearly went on with her vehicle. All the stuff's in her vehicle, and she's missing. So at the very least, I would think there was a medical emergency, and I think that, you're desperate to find her in time.
Man, even if they didn't know right away... Her shoes, the shoes she was last seen wearing, were in the car. And it's like, why, if this person tried to push her own car into a ravine that she just purchased and disappeared, why would she do it barefoot?
Yeah, and it's possible that there was nothing more to be found. But always hurts to lose that opportunity to retrieve, unblemished forensic evidence. And
you can't get it back.
Exactly. And that brings us to today. While multiple state and local investigative agencies have joined the search effort and more evidence has certainly been collected since last summer, there has still been no sign of Caitlyn Rose Case. And, I guess we should talk about theories.
Yeah, such as it is.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have much to go on.
Yeah, there's so little evidence in this case. Yeah. It's not even, we don't even have people at home to look at. We don't have people in Louisiana to look at. Yeah. We're just in the dark.
Presumably, Caitlyn either ended up near that cliff and left of her own accord, which seems very unlikely.
That makes zero sense. She had just purchased that car.
Yeah. I mean, she had just purchased the car. She was heading back. She was in constant communication with her family. And
she had a job that she was going back to. She had a life she was going back to. It's just, and her shoes were in the car. Yeah. Who takes off their shoes to disappear?
Yeah, that's a no-go for me, but we have to bring it up, obviously.
Yeah, because we don't have evidence of a crime otherwise.
We don't have evidence that didn't happen, I guess.
Exactly. So it's still, in theory, plausible.
Whoever, and I guess the next theory would be some sort of foul play, right? Like whoever was driving that second car, that witness was responsible for her disappearance. And it was likely in that case, if that is, what happened, it was likely a crime of opportunity because it would have been a stranger.
Well, and that's the thing. She's in the middle of nowhere. She doesn't have any ties to this small town in Oklahoma. The last time anyone we know of spoke to her, she was near a very small town in Texas, just over the border. It would be weird if someone she knew had stalked her out there.
And I would also think, let's just say a situation where her car ended up having an issue, right? And she pulled over because of car issues, and then someone took advantage of that opportunity to hurt her. But the car was running, from what the property owner's daughter-in-law said, that she saw two taillights. So it seems that the other car that her envoy was driving.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason to think otherwise. But even if she had run into car trouble and someone helped, I'm putting in air quotes, it's going to be really hard to find that person because she doesn't have any ties to this area.
And that's the thing. And I mean, and I guess another theory that I'd like to mention would be that Caitlyn left herself, like, voluntarily, but it was because she was in some sort of distress and was looking for help, and then somehow got lost or confused from where she was in her surroundings, and they just and something happened there, and they haven't found her body yet.
Some kind of quasi.
Yes.
Yeah, and I guess that is a possibility. The fact that the car is found on this private property and the witness saw the two cars that night.
I agree.
It makes it feel like probably foul play.
And how would this girl, who's never been hanging out in this area before, at least, how would she have found this private property? And how would her car? Yeah. That's the thing. It would have had to have been random.
Exactly. How would she have even known to go back there, and that wouldn't raise red flags? It's as you want to go through all the possibilities with this one, but it feels like a foregone conclusion that this was foul play.
Yeah, I agree. Caitlyn's family continues to search for her every day, and they don't intend to stop until they find their daughter. And they also plead with the public continuously to share the story and get the word out. They believe, and I think they're correct, that Caitlyn met with foul play that night. And at least one person, but probably more likely, more than that, know what happened to her.
Yeah, well, because you got to figure, if two cars drove into that private property that night, someone was driving Caitlyn's car.
Yep. And her family asked that anyone with any information, please call or text them at 985-236-2558. or you can call the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation at 1-800-522-8017. Caitlyn Case is 5 feet 5 inches tall, weighs a roughly 140 pounds, and was last seen wearing a black spaghetti strap top, light blue jeans, and red tennis shoes. But the tennis shoes were found in Caitlyn's car, so just keep that in mind. If you or anyone you know has any information to offer, however tangential, please share it with the right people and help the Case family find their daughter.
Absolutely. If you see something, say something.
Yep. I think this episode was too sad for Winston.
I know, he's a little baby.
He has a gentle little heart, but thankfully he's been very preoccupied with smelling a bunch of stuff that was left in the studio last week, so he's doing well.
And he had a good walk on the beach today.
He really did.
So
oh my God. He has sand. It's so funny. He has sand all over his little snout.
It's
so
all
cute.
all in his hair, all in his belly. It's so funny.
So funny. But thanks everyone for listening, and make sure to check out the photos for this episode on our website forcrimesake.com or on our social media. And please feel free to let us know what your thoughts are on this case or any episode, and any suggestions for cases you'd like us to cover. We appreciate.
Yeah, we're always interested in what you guys want to hear us look into.
And share this episode. The more people that listen, and start talking about this, the more likely it is to get answers and to give the Case family some sort of, hopefully, resolution. I mean, I guess there's no...
Yeah, I mean, there's probably not a great resolution to be had here, but someone out there has information. Someone
exactly.
can
At least they need answers, and that is what they're looking for, and what we hope to help them with in any way.
Get the word out.
Yep.
Exactly.
But thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with a new episode. Thanks, guys.